I appreciate having the opportunity to present what to me is one of the key concerns that I have for our nation and our state, and more specifically our community. In fact, my ultimate focus is that the community and members of the community spend a little more time looking up what the New World Order and Agenda 21 is all about. And in order to really do that, it's going to take time to see the depth and breadth of what's going on in areas that we normally don't have time to watch. I'm reminded of when I was serving as a high school counselor. We would work quite a bit to try to get information out to the parents. And we had a monthly newsletter, we had a website, and we had a marquee that we would put information on. And even with those things, I would have parents constantly coming in saying, why hasn't someone told me about that? We do live in a society that's really busy. We get focused. In fact, I think it's been a benefit to our opposition, if I may call it, to get us very busy and out of focus. Distracted is a better word. So we're busy doing our thing, and we don't see what's going on in the shadows and how serious it might be. I also want to share, though it's hard to explain, and I actually have a little presentation and PowerPoint on the psychology and physiology issues of staying in balance, our natural tendencies to keep a balance in our life, and how we kind of achieve that. There's a theory called cognitive dissonance, and it basically establishes that we try to keep a balance and understanding and some consistency or congruency in our life with what we're doing and what we understand. And when we get information that is contrary to our inner core beliefs and understanding, then that kind of shakes us a little bit, and we have to decide what to do with that. And normally, we will do one of a few things. We will put it on the side for later, which may or may not come. We put it away, saying, I don't think that's that big of a deal, low priority. Or we may just say, nah, I don't buy that. Although if we focus on it and actually find out it's valid, we are then forced to change some of our other understanding. If this is true, how can this be true? Now, I don't want to say we're lazy sometimes, but it takes a lot of time and effort to do that. And again, if we're very engaged in a topic of our interest, we may not get around to doing that. It takes a rare person, I think, to get locked in on a topic and really research it to the point that they understand what's going on. So, an example of what we do is, let's say the first time we drive a car, we're really watching a lot of stuff. We're not really sure right and wrong. I mean, our anxiety level is high. But as we drive and as we practice, we learn what to ignore and what to pay attention to. And sometimes we'll even get to a point where we're just attending to a few things, i.e., gee, I got to get this message to somebody, so I'm texting while I'm driving, because of course nothing's ever happened. I'm sure it'll be okay. The interesting part is, whether you look at the driving example or other examples, we actually have a tendency to look at things and assume a lot of information. For example, someone may know Harlan Bounds. And Harlan may introduce me and say, well, Mr. Parker, Jim is a friend of mine. Well, people may more than likely assume, well, Jim must be okay. Now that may or may not be true, but we do a lot of assuming. And of course, so we go through our lives and assume, coming back to the issue of New World Order, we go through our lives and assume everything is good. Sky is blue, all is well. And we function well, and we feel balanced, and we feel happy. Now, there may be a chance after this presentation you may have witnessed some things that might shake that up a little bit. So all of a sudden you could look at this and go, gee, what do I do? Is the world coming to an end, or are things all that bad? And you have to again kind of negotiate where you're going to go with that. Do I put that on the shelf? Do I actually believe that? Am I going to change the way I do and think and my priorities? So those are the kind of things we deal with as individuals from a psychological standpoint, and even physiologically we monitor those things because they are combined. So, because the time is short, I won't go into a lot of my background, but I did spend time in the military, had a lot of experience in administration and operations and emergency management. Spent 15 years in the education business, teacher, counselor, school psychologist. And along that lines, and with the amount of times I moved and other experiences I had before and during the military, I kind of learned what people were like in various situations. I guess what I want to establish is I didn't fall off of a turnip truck. I have accomplished a number of things in my life, although I have just as many things I have screwed up or not done. So I would hope you would take a look at the information that I've come and at least accept the challenge to look into it further and to watch. In fact, I've got some handouts in the back, some of which identify some areas that you may not be buying this right now or understand the level of the threat, but watch these things, and as they progress toward the area of lack of freedoms, control, and threat to our personal property and ability to choose what and do what we want, I would suggest that may encourage you to start focusing more on this. Because in my mind, and I know it may sound a little unique, but in my mind, a lot of people are working on things right now, and they're really busy working on them. But what they're working on and investing all their time in a year or two, may not even exist. And my perception is they're too busy working on these things to notice what's happening in the world, in the nation, even in our own state and communities, that are beginning to take away our freedoms and change, as the President has said, fundamentally, the basis of all basic issues, fundamentally change what we do, how we think, where we go. So maybe at some time, break away a little bit of what you're busy doing and think about spending more time investigating and researching this and other kind of topics. Yes?
Would you say that they're also trying to use this through our educational system? First grade, kindergarten actually, all the way up to high school.
The question is, are they using education? And I appreciate you asking that, because it brings me to the point that when we take a look at what they call Agenda 21, it is an actual publication that is written in instructional and activity achievement form. It's not a fun read. It is, this is our goal. This is how we're going to achieve it. This is how we're going to invest in getting it all over the place and make it happen. And they go through 200 or 300 pages with multiple goals, and they have included everything in their agenda. education is a key focus, because just as I was taught in 6th grade, the first thing that someone wants to control is information flow. And they go for the media, and they go for education. And long-term investment is in education, in changing the way we're teaching, what we're talking about. And we have, as I'm sure some of you have noticed, gotten into concerns about C-scope, about Common Core. A lot of things are really starting to shock some people. In fact, just this weekend, in fact, it was last night I found it, in the New York Times, they had an article, a positive, supportive article about some exciting changes in high school science. The changes are that they are no longer going to be, and I note this, that you're going to see differences in a lot of districts and areas, but the trend is they're no longer requiring chemistry and biology for graduation. They are now focusing on environmental science, climate change, things that are being used by the New World Order groups in order to use this, what I call a facade of environmental concern, and in that topic they're rooting control issues and things that are starting to take away from our liberty and agency. In fact, one of the things I put in the back talks about their key term of sustainability. They talk a lot about sustainability. They don't talk about what is unsustainable that much, because if you're thinking and wanting to draw those 2 points together, you're going, well, if you're pushing sustainability, what is it that you're saying has to go? And so they don't like to talk about those things. They don't like to address, oh, well, private property is unsustainable. Single-family homes, unsustainable. Urban sprawl is what they call it. It actually means any housing area outside of the city, in the long term, they are calling unsustainable. Anything that blocks a natural stream or river is unsustainable. They don't even like things that are not natural species. So anything that has been brought into an environment that is a foreign species, they consider it unsustainable. Paved roads, unsustainable. High population, unsustainable. And the key is, what I encourage folks to look into is, as you read their material, don't get too drawn in by the warm and fuzzy, fluffy language, because that is kind of like the PR side of things. But you need to look on the contrary side to what are they really emphasizing and pushing. And if you attend to the language that they're using that says consumption is scary, in fact, you may or may not know, you actually have been designated to have an ecological footprint. There is actually a website, and there are banks that are set up to actually focus on these things. You have a footprint, and of course you can go through and answer their questions, and it'll tell you how much more of the earth you're consuming than you should be. Now, isn't it fascinating? Because they are writing their own science. They are doing a lot of things, and they call it, as you may have noticed, a consensus. This is no longer a debate. Global warming is real. And you're scratching your head going, wow, that's really interesting. So there are these things, and they encompass everything. Their intent is that they are going to encompass and control education. They are encompassing energy. They are encompassing water, food, you name it. It is a total comprehensive area. In fact, again, it may seem like a small item, but again, just this week, I think it was Maryland passed a rain tax. Now, they have been for a number of years controlling water. They have been requiring farmers to put up containment areas, saying that you can't let rainwater run because it brings pollutions. And there are little steps happening that are controlling water. Well, the state of Maryland is now saying we have to tax you for rain runoff. Of course, it's always amusing because they exempt the government buildings. They exempt, much like President Obama exempted unions and things under health care, they exempt their favorite people, but they are now looking to charge citizens and companies based on their size of facility and parking lot a tax based on how much water is running off. So it's crazy. Real quickly before I press on with, I have far too many things given the time to show you. It's frustrating. Ultimately, an understanding of Agenda 21 and the New World Order is time and numbers of witnesses, examples. When you begin to see the entire 9,000-pound elephant, that is when you start going, wow. Now, I was either blessed or cursed to be unemployed for a number of years before I retired. It was that time I had, that most people don't have, that I began to research and look on the internet. I'd hear things on some of the newscasts from Glenn Beck, from Fox News, and I'd go, now that sounds really interesting. So I would track, go back to the internet, look up that organization, see who was running it, did they have some political leanings, where's the money coming from? And I started to really get concerned with the number of organizations on the international level, on the national level, state, even community level, that are all stepping to the same drummer. And the level of money that is involved in this is amazing. It's frightening. You can't even understand it. For example, one of the lead-ins, and I've got a slide for it, are you aware that the feds, God only knows, I think I know who they might be generally, but we don't know who they really are. They don't work for the government. Nobody can tell them what to do. They have gone through the sequence of bailout 1, bailout 2, bailout 3, bailout 4. Bailout 4 was passed, and it is ongoing. They issue, and I haven't seen any, have you seen any? They issue $85 billion a month. Now, you all know what $1 billion is. In case you don't, the analogy I use is that if you were born the same day Christ was born, you know, as we understand day one of 0, and you lived, you never died, you're still alive, and you had a great uncle that gave you an allowance, and you could spend $1,000 a day, every day, from the time that Christ was born till today. You still have not spent $1 billion. And when we talk about adding $1 trillion of debt, you can multiply that with 3 zeros. $100,000 a day. That's how much money they're going through. And they're sending this out to who knows who. Well, my opinion is they're funding their agenda. They may, and I'm not an expert, but I watch the stock market. It doesn't make sense. For all I know, they may be funding the rise of the stock market because other investors are saying that the big money people have actually been selling American stocks and getting out of the stock market. Of course, again, the challenge that we face is what's a legitimate source of information and can we check it out and validate it? You may be interested that there are organizations out there. This is a publication that comes from the National Center for Public Policy Research. These are actually 2 documents that identify 100 people that have had their property taken away or their rights taken away because of some of the laws that come under Agenda 21. And they have to do with endangered species, they have to do with reclaiming land, and there's stories of people that have been ripped off. This is the 2003 issue. This is the 2007 issue, and of course, stories continue. And again, when we put a face on it and read each of these 100 stories, it begins to go, oh wow, this is kind of serious. I'm going to proceed through. I want you to see some videos of individuals that are saying we should be concerned, and examples of what's going on. And I'm going to try to push through this so that I'm not doing a ton of talking, but they can be another witness to their concerns. I encourage you to take a look. I've got handouts in the back that have a number of sources of information that you can look up on the internet, areas you can go, individuals that I call freedom fighters that have been trying to call out to people for 20 years, a decade, 2 decades. They have, and these are scientists. These are people that say, I got involved with these people, and holy mackerel, do you know what they're going to do? So a lot of information, it takes time, but let's go ahead and proceed. One of the handouts also is a list, because I didn't have the time, it's a list of things that I have seen in my lifetime that have happened that don't make sense. It's like, what are you doing? In fact, it's on one of the things, if you remember when they shut the water off of thousands of acres of farmland in California. I mean, this is Central Valley, California. Our breadbasket, one of the biggest breadbaskets we have that had been feeding America. And they shut it down because of a concern for a fish. In our own state, they shut down a $15 million interchange that had been contracted, that had people employed, that a lot of stuff's going on. They shut it down because they found a spider. Now, I'm scratching my head, I don't understand. Well, when I started looking at Agenda 21, all of these things that didn't make sense line right up with what they want to do. And it is, by the way, we are species now. If you listen to the scientists and some of these people, they will let you know that you are a species. Just one of thousands. And in environmental justice, we are no better and no worse than those species. But they have as many rights as we do. And because we're consuming so much, they say the earth is being diminished and destroyed. And so what they don't talk about is, there's too many of you. And you are unsustainable because you are consuming more than you should and taking away from future generations and these other species. If you really play that out all the way, that could be a serious concern. In fact, they push population control, but that's another thing they don't like to talk about. So let me play these for you. One of the things they're doing, which we saw in other areas, especially to the Jews during World War II, is you begin to degrade and attack individuals. You probably have seen a lot of divide and conquer. We're breaking these, you need to hate this group. These guys are bad. And you start to see this in the next 3 videos that I've got. This is an attack on seniors.
They haven't gone up because of demographics. They've gone up because the seniors have a very, very powerful lobby. They keep getting more and more transfer payments from the youth.
Look what senior citizens are doing, stealing from the next generation. Who is going to be the group of people that stop this?
What I'm against is current seniors, to me, stealing from future seniors. I'm probably going to disappear again at some point, but in the meantime, I'm going to do what I can. One area I'd love to focus on, if they'll have me, and I know I'm going to give a talk at some point at my alma mater, Bowdoin College, is to talk to the young people. Because I don't think they would be electing leaders who say they don't want to balance the budget on the back of seniors if they knew what was going on out there. And so I'd like to some extent, try and communicate with the young people, whether that is going to college campuses or using some other medium to get to them.
Now, I cut these really short because of time, but what I found interesting, and I've been blessed, cursed, I actually ran a video business for 5 years. So I learned how much energy and time it takes to shoot and put together a presentation. You script it. It is not accidental. It is not, gee, it went off in a different direction. When I watch some of these things, I think the amount of energy and time it took to put that together and set it up just to happen. And you may not have caught it, but I caught the gal actually setting him up, saying, well, how do you tell people about how the seniors are stealing from the youth? And of course, they leave a lot out, but this is, he wants to go and he wants to tell the youth that the seniors are stealing from them, and you've got to stop it. This is a video that was done in England. I would like you to note that this is about a CO2 global warming agenda project called 1010, that they want everybody to cut down their CO2 emissions. Please focus on the fact again that this was set up. The graphics itself took quite a bit of work. Don't underestimate what and how they're saying to you, you need to go along with us.
Right, just want to check on that 1010 thing. Had some brilliant ideas from lots of you, how the firm can cut down emissions by 10%. Just quick show of hands, everyone who wants to get involved. Great, that's nearly everybody. And yeah, just for the record, no pressure, those who aren't quite convinced about it yet. Cool, no problem, your choice. Okay, so those of you planning something here or at home should probably get working on it. Oh, gorgeous. Those of you who aren't, excellent. Have a great weekend, everyone.
1010. Hundreds of thousands of people, schools, businesses, hospitals, movie stars, knitting circles, scout troops, presidents and governments, all tackling climate change in more than 40 countries. Care to join us? No pressure. Is that okay?
Sounded great to me. Thanks,
Okay.
Julian.
Happy to help.
So, what are you thinking of doing for 1010 yourself?
What, are you kidding me? I thought that by doing this voiceover, that was my contribution.
Right. No, absolutely. No pressure.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
There were two others of these that I cut out. One was a class of elementary students they did the same thing with. And another one was athletes in the field. Again, the amount of time that set this up and what is the message that they're trying to say. Now here's an issue that's bubbling up right now in our education system. And this has to do with white privilege. Again, we have an enemy we need to control. Forgive my words, but watch.
about it now as white privilege. Is that real?
Of course it's real, and I'm white and I have it. I can walk in the street in New York City and put my hand out and no taxi will pass me by.
Whiteness is a form of racial oppression.
We think that we have the right to do whatever we want.
There can be no white race without the phenomenon of white supremacy.
So number one, white privilege is a real thing. It's not something you have to look inside yourself to see if it exists. It does exist. It's like a default setting. It's just there.
Your views are fairly well received in academia.
Yes, they're legitimate. Not to say that everyone agrees, but sure.
You know, I don't want him calling me devil. You're offending. Of course, the devil is wicked and he's the master of deception. I say in the words of Malcolm X, if you find any good white people, kill them first before they turn bad.
This is not a culture. It's not a religion, it's not a language, it's simply an oppressive social category.
An alarming number of conference speakers operated under the premise that whites are inherently biased and racist, and that the primary reason minority students are not performing as well academically is because the system as a whole is engineered to benefit whites. Laverne Jackson Harvey, who works for the Department of Public Instruction, included in her presentation, there appears to be a national trend that can be attributed to the conservative agenda that currently exists, with former closet racists leaving the closet and entering the light to write policies that support covert and overt racism that impact students of color.
And I remember sitting in a meeting and being told that I need to own my whiteness and I need to own the fact that I have white privilege. And until I can own that and almost feel the embarrassment from it and the shame from it, only then can I start breaking, down the walls and be able to teach my students of color and to reach out to them, which of course is absolutely absurd.
One such author, Dr. Frances Kendall, claims racism, sexism, heterosexism, the institutionalized primacy of Christianity, and able-bodiedism work toward a common goal: to maintain power and control in the hands of wealthy, white, heterosexual, Christian, able-bodied men. Dr. Geneva Gay, a 2012 conference keynote speaker, said this:
"We know that social change is not something that comes about because people want to do it. There has to be some kind of mandatory kind of accountability track that's going on. This requires fundamental change, and change is difficult for most of us to achieve, but yet it must be done."
Now the interesting thing here, these people in general, they just lie. They misrepresent. They present themselves in this way one time and another way another. And if you are not representing the truth over time, you just can't keep consistent. And so as you track them, you start to see them reveal information. You may have caught this gal, and it's important to note, she said, this is not something you want to do. This is something you're going to have to do. And there has been, I've got documents and a number of things, that they're pushing paternalism. You just don't have the strength to do this. Look what you've done to the nation so far. They, of course, think we have put ourselves in the situation it's in. You can't control yourselves. You haven't done anything. We need to manage you like a child and get you to do the right thing. And that theme plays in a lot of what they communicate and pitch. I'm going to flip through here quick. Anybody that would like a copy of the presentation, I'm more than happy to share that. The one concept I wanted to focus on, and I mentioned a little bit earlier about how we kind of maintain balance, and it's hard to think of this Agenda 21, oh, it's just radical people somewhere, don't take it seriously. But when you take a look at the money and the power that's behind it, and I note one thing, have we not seen things happen on a national level? For example, the Justice Department saying, I'm not going to enforce that law. Oh, I'm not going to punish them. And even them turning and suing states
and become aggressive in taxation and fees and litigation. Why isn't anybody rising up and saying, you can't do this, it's against the law? Why is Congress doing or not doing what they're not doing? It just doesn't make sense. I would like to suggest, consider somebody is backing them that is so powerful that no one can or dare try to change it. If they can't change it, if these tendencies continue, I suggest it's because they have the money and power behind it. The concept I wanted to address is to try to help us think about, have there been leaders that are elitists and think that they're gods or they control everything? Have there been the history of nations that kings and their special people had the wealth and they kind of let the serfs and the small people, do what they do? But they controlled it all. My question to you is, can that thing exist? Has it exist? Could it exist again? Could there be a group of people that expect to lower the consumption level of the United States down to a third world country level so that we can redistribute everything, and then the leaders that know better, they can run everything? Because of course you can do it better than anybody else, and it's frustrating when I want to do something and people stop me, especially if I have money and I'm used to getting my way. So I suggest, could that happen? The videos and things that I've got now suggest or provide some evidence to keep that as a possible option.
To the 70 million people of Japan, Hirohito, their emperor, is a god who direct descent from the great sun goddess Amaterasu. They believe that he personally owns Japan, its land, its resources, and even themselves. And they believe that it is the right and destiny of Japan's emperors to rule the whole world. To bring about the fulfillment of this destiny and to destroy all nations and peoples which stand in the way of its fulfillment is the sacred duty of Japan's army and navy. The army of Japan is a well-trained, sternly disciplined force of fanatics devoted to reckless courage by a primitive moral code which assures to every man who dies in battle an immortal life among the Shinto gods.
So during World War II, the Emperor of Japan was a god. He owned everything and just let people use it. Now, I don't suggest, as we all know, there's good people everywhere. But if we understand the power of political correctness and the individuals that are in power, a lot of people will go along with what's happening because that's just the way things are. And that was the way things were in Japan. And of course, Nazi Germany wasn't that different. Now what I've got is a little bit of information in the investment side of the world that is talking about who is actually controlling and managing things. Is it the government or is it the wealthy, the elite?
Markets are ruled right now by fear. Investors and the big money, the smart money. I'm talking about the big funds, the hedge funds, the institutions. They don't buy this rescue plan. They basically, they know the market is toast. They know the stock market is finished. The euro, as far as they're concerned, they don't really care. They're moving their money away to safer assets, like treasury bonds, 30-year bonds, and the US dollar. So it's not going to work.
We keep hearing that whatever the politicians are suggesting, and admittedly it's all been rather woolly so far, isn't right. Can you pin down exactly what would keep investors happy, make them feel more confident?
That's a tough one. Personally, it doesn't matter, but I'm a trader. I don't really care about that kind of stuff. I go with if I see an opportunity to make money, I go with that. So for most traders, it's not about, we don't really care that much how they're going to fix the economy, how they're going to fix the whole situation. Our job is to make money from it. And personally, I've been dreaming of this one for 3 years. I have a confession, which is I go to bed every night, I dream of another recession. I dream of another moment like this. Why? Because people don't seem to maybe remember, but the 30s depression, the depression in the 30s, wasn't just about a market crash. There were some people who were prepared to make money from that crash. And I think anybody can do that. It isn't just for some people in the elite. Anybody can actually make money. It's an opportunity. When the market crashes, when the euro and the big stock markets crash, if you know what to do, if you have the right plan set up, you can make a lot of money from this. For example, hedging strategies is one. Then investing in bonds, treasury bonds, that sort of stuff.
If you could see the people around me, jaws have collectively dropped at what you've just said. I mean, we appreciate your candor, however, it doesn't help the rest of us, does it? All the rest of the Eurozone.
Listen, I would say to everybody who's watching this, this economic crisis is like a cancer. If you just wait and wait thinking this is going to go away, just like a cancer, it's going to grow and it's going to be too late. What I would say to everybody is, get prepared. There's not a time right now to wishful thinking the government's going to sort things out. The governments don't rule the world. Goldman Sachs rules the world. Goldman Sachs does not care about this rescue package, neither does the big funds. So actually, what I would actually tell people, I want to help people. People can make money from this. It isn't just traders. What they need to do is learn about how to make money from a downward market. The first thing people should do is protect their assets. Protect what they have. Because in less than 12 months, my prediction is the savings of millions of people is going to vanish. And this is just the beginning. So I would say be prepared and act now. The biggest risk people can take right now is not acting.
Alessio Rastani, thank you very much for talking to us.
You dream about the economy at night?
I try not to.
Yeah.
This is a follow-up to the story.
Goldman Sachs rules the world.
It was the comment heard around the world, one that generated widespread reaction from papers and pundits alike.
We appreciate your candor, however, it doesn't help the rest of us, does it?
But instead of talking about the comment itself, most outlets immediately sought to shoot the messenger, Alessio Rastani. Forbes called him a psychopath. CNBC suggests it might be a hoax. New York Magazine wonders if it is a hoax or perhaps our worst nightmare.
Well, regardless of Rastani's intentions, the bigger question has been largely ignored. Was he wrong about the power of Goldman Sachs? And why was everyone so shocked? After all, right here at RT, in our studios, we've had several guests, bona fide traders, even former Goldman Sachs employees, who have said the very same thing.
Washington is not the biggest player in this. The global bankers are the biggest players, the global hedge fund managers, and that's where the action, that's who's determining the outcome of this, not the players in Washington. They have already ceded control to the global banking industry.
Wall Street has been pulling the strings in Washington from the get-go. It is the largest sector of campaign contributions, and that's to both parties.
But for the mainstream media who don't air views like these, Rastani's honesty was unexpected, says Survive and Thrive TV's George Heminger.
When they asked him these questions on BBC, he just let it all hang out, and the actual truth came across.
Rastani also sent shockwaves around the world when he told the BBC that most traders don't really care if and when the economy is fixed.
Personally, I've been dreaming of this one for 3 years. I had a confession, which is I go to bed every night, I dream of another recession.
The BBC interview has now gone viral.
If you could see the people around me, jaws have collectively dropped at what you've just said.
Perhaps their jaws wouldn't have dropped had they only read Matt Taibbi's July 2009 Rolling Stone article, The Great American Bubble Machine. In it, he famously described Goldman Sachs as a, quote, great vampire squid, wrapped around the face of humanity, relentlessly jamming its blood funnel into anything that smells like money. Taibbi discussed with us recently how, although people are unaware of it, the big bank has profound power in society.
How much are you paying for gas? How much are you paying for electricity? How much are you paying for your credit cards, your mortgages? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much of your tax dollars are going to debt service?
And still others have argued for years that the government's actions are dictated by the big banks.
The very special interests on Wall Street, the insurance industry, these are the people who are writing the laws that Obama is passing. They are keeping him in power. They're the ones that have financed his campaign, and the laws are being written for their benefit.
As anger builds here, perhaps better questions need to be asked here, so that a different message is sent to decision makers here. That the system that has been sustained and protected for decades might need to change. In Washington, Christine Frizzell, RT.
Again, I emphasize just some of the things that have been happening this month, even this week. And this represents a few of those things.
This would happen. And I told you, you'll say to yourself, hurry when you see it. I said there would be a time when the progressives would stop hiding behind all their crafty little language, and they would just come right out, and they'd just start saying it because they wouldn't be afraid anymore.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order, because the global order is changing again. And the institutions and rules that worked so well in the post-World War II era for decades, they need to be strengthened. And some have to be changed. So we have to do what we do best. We have to lead. We have to lead. We have to update the global rules of the road. We have to do it in a way that maximizes benefits for everyone.
I stopped this just to note, watch his face and expression. He is talking to bankers. Now this is specifically trade, international trade banks. Banks that are actually, that's all the business they do. And he's talking to the bankers, and he's about ready to say, it's in our interest. Just kind of watch how he responds, body language to that issue, I'm assuming, because it's who he's talking to.
Because obviously it's overwhelmingly in our interest. This is not a zero-sum game. It's overwhelmingly in our interest that China prosper, that Mongolia prosper, that nations big and large, east and west. We have to level the playing field so when American companies and workers can compete in the world, that the competition is fair and it's healthy. And while this agenda is far from complete,
but all the while, they have been chipping away and they snuck in through the back door. Well, now they are sitting in your front room, and your side room, and your kitchen, and your bedroom. They are everywhere. I said that there would come a time when they would no longer fear and they would just come out and say it. And I told you then, you'll know it when you see it. Well, over the weekend, I saw it. A piece of video that I watched. I couldn't believe it. I watched it many times. We talked about it on the radio today, but it is still hard to believe this actually is airing on national television and there is no outcry in America. May I print a promo from MSNBC?
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have, because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families, and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
Isn't that great? Once we break through that crazy old-fashioned notion that kids belong to their parents. This is not a parody. This is not a skit. This is coming from the propaganda arm of the progressive socialist and collective philosophy, MSNBC. We have seen an awful lot from MSNBC. But now they are proposing that your kids don't even belong to you, and they are just doing it in a promo. This is a coming out party, official declaration on MSNBC. They're not dancing around the issue anymore, just flat out, yep, your kids don't belong to you. This isn't about Melissa Harris Perry, who went to Jeremiah Wright's church, is a political science professor at Tulane University. This isn't about a woman who on Easter...
Now, forgive me, I stopped this. If you remember back to Vice President Biden, he talked about leveling the playing field. Who's he leveling?
That's going down.
And then he says it has to be fair for all of us, so American businesses, you know, each one of these videos and each item that I call a witness to their intent, in and of itself is not that meaningful. But as you watch the cumulative numbers of these things, whether they're a written article or a video, you start to see the inconsistency and the lies. This coming example of the gal that did the promo is the same thing. She's sitting here talking about what's good for the children and education. Of course, if you caught the very first word, she's talking about money. We have never funded education the way we should. Okay? She's going to now show you how much she loves life and children.
Called preborn babies things.
But the reality is that if this turns into a person, right, there are economic consequences, right? The cost to raise a child, $10,000 a year, up to $20,000 a year, when you're talking about what it actually costs to have this thing turn into a human.
This thing. Wow.
Now, one last video, and because of time, we're going to have to call it. This is one of the handouts in the back. One of the internet references is to this speech. It's 60 minutes.